Armstrong. Marty, thank you so much for coming on, my friend.
Well, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure hearing from you as well, Martin. And let's just kick it off and talk about what's on everyone's mind. I think the two big stories are silver and Venezuela. So, you know what, let's kick it off with Venezuela. We'll cover silver as we progress. But maybe they're connected. Who knows? We'll see. But what do you make of this kidnapping, this arrest of Maduro that we witnessed over this past weekend? What's the larger plan here? Because it seems like the government is still intact. They just took Maduro off the game board here. What's the larger strategy here from the Trump administration? What does this mean for geopolitics across the world?
Well, look, the real story, I know a lot of people are just talking about China and oil, etc., but this is honestly, this is the Cuban Missile Crisis all over again. Putin, I think his biggest mistake is that he keeps warning, you really want nuclear war, etc. But nobody's listening to him. And he made, I think, the mistake of hinting that they might put missiles in Cuba and Venezuela. Now, from his perspective, that would be a check against NATO doing that in Ukraine. Okay. I think a lot of this stuff has been declassified by now, but the real story behind the Cuban Missile Crisis was that Khrushchev was doing that, and the deal, which they hid for a long time, was that Kennedy agreed to pull out the Jupiter missiles from Turkey. I think that was hidden for almost 20 years. And so he backed off on that side. So this is a repeat. I put the missiles in Cuba and Venezuela, which could easily threaten even Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. And that would be the bargaining chip against Ukraine and NATO. So I think Putin's mistake is even saying this stuff publicly, because those threats were taken seriously. Okay, and Mark Rubio, who is a notorious neocon, has been, arguing for the overthrow of Venezuela for a number of years. He's just been appointed viceroy of Venezuela. Now, they only took out, Maduro, and I think killed only his bodyguards. So the country's intact, the military, etc. All right. So, despite everything that the Trump haters, say, oh, this is illegal, etc. I posted on my site a CNN clip from 2019 when they were saying, oh, he's not going into Venezuela because he's a puppet of Putin. So they will flip the story any which way from Sunday at this stage. But look, this was a repeat of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And if you listen to Trump's statement when they asked him, how is this America first? He says, we have to be, we're concerned about our neighbors. We want good neighbors. All right. He doesn't mention drugs. Afterwards, second thing that he then states is the energy also. But most people are going to say, oh, he's just trying to get all the energy, etc. It's a lot more than that. All right. Strategically, yes, if you have the oil of Venezuela, that also removes the Middle East from using oil as a weapon in any geopolitical issue, as they did before. Um, the real wild card here is how Trump deals with China. Now, I believe they leaving the government intact means that he's not disturbing that. All right, China is the number one customer for the oil from Venezuela. However, they have also lent tens of billions of dollars to Venezuela, which owes China. So that would be, I think, political suicide for Trump to try to cut off China. It gets to be really, a quagmire at that point because Venezuela owes China a lot of money.
What about his comments about if China wants to keep buying oil from Venezuela, they can do so, but they'll have to use USDs as opposed to Chinese yuans in the process? Can they enforce something like that, even if the government, if it's still the same government as before, the regime hasn't changed, just the head of state has? Is that going to happen, or is the Venezuelan government all of a sudden going to demand that China buy its oil in USDs over the Chinese currency?
Yes, that's entirely possible because he has also installed Rubio as the viceroy of Venezuela.
But what if the government there doesn't recognize Rubio as the viceroy?
Then they probably would be overthrown. So, I mean, he's leaving the government intact, but has also made comments to this this new VP, acting president, as well as to Cuba. You better behave yourself.
I see. And so does this move effectively neutralize Russia as well? So do you anticipate the Venezuelan government existing today won't accept any missiles from Russia on their soil?
Right. No, I mean, that's, I think, the whole objective here. And I think the Russian oil company, at least I had gotten a phone call, I don't know if it's in the press, that they were exiting Venezuela about 2 or 3 days before. So I don't know what's actually out in the press yet. That was a private phone call I got. So, but look, this is the real geopolitical issue here. It's a question of Russia putting missiles there. China was not looking to do so. So this was from the Russian side.
I see. Does the fact that the Chinese delegation was in Venezuela just mere hours before the kidnapping occurred mean anything? Was China foreseeably in on it, possibly?
I don't think so.
Or was this kind of like a power play? Because Trump did something similar in 2017 when President Xi Jinping visited the Mar-a-Lago, actually, and then he hit Syria. He hit a Syrian air base at the same night. Is this kind of like a posturing thing, similar to that?
Probably. I mean, it may just be a coincidence. Like I say, the most critical factor here was the missiles possibly coming from Russia, which would be, a Cuban Missile Crisis play. And let's say Russia did that. Then that puts them in a driver's seat to demand certain things about NATO. I mean, that's what happened last time. So I think that was much more of the issue at stake and why this was done now. Uh, if you look at Trump's statement when he was asked, how is this America first? He didn't even mention drugs. Most of the drugs come from across the border from Mexico. Um, so, I mean, that's just been a good cover story, I believe. But, I mean, the real issue here is geopolitical. And allowing Russia to put missiles in Venezuela or Cuba or any other place in South America is national security.
Mm. He has used that term, national security, when talking about Greenland too. Is there any connection with Greenland and Russia and China there as well? Like, what's going on?
I don't believe so. I mean, Greenland is more of a really rare earth issue.
Mm.
I mean, we have a base there, Thule, Greenland. When I was back in the 60s, they used to send guys up there for a year. And, I was offered that tour. I declined, but you went there for a year and a day, and you had to be there just in case something went down. I talked to guys that did it and did that tour. I knew one that did 2 tours. And you stayed there for a year and a day, and it was all tax-free. I asked him what he did. He says he watched the same movie 30 times and played cards and darts. That was about it. You just got to be there in case something happens, because they couldn't get a plane in because it's just too cold at times.
I see. So it's a rare earth play, and China controls what like 90+% of the rare earth market.
Yes.
Is that the reason why? And
They're
China's
pretty much.
closing off of, yeah.
Look, it takes about 900 pounds of rare earth just to make one, F-35. So it is a national security issue. That is why also Trump was talking about the 51st state from Canada. Greenland's the same thing. In the peace proposal I was asked to make, part of the proposal I said that we should basically just go into a joint venture with Russia. They have the technology to go after the rare earths, but they lack the capital. People have to understand, rare earths are not really rare. What it is that they're not concentrated. It's not like, mining gold and you got a solid vein of gold or silver or something like that. So it takes much different type of mining operation.
Mm.
And you got to move an awful lot of earth to get it, rare earths. That's why they call them rare.
Gotcha. So Medvedev posted a comment yesterday saying that the actions from the United States were illegal but consistent with U.S. interests. It kind of sounds like he's thanking Trump for setting the precedent, because are they implying that they could do the same to Zelensky if they wanted to, because it's effectively in the interest of Russia?
Yeah, I mean, look, what's the, this is basically a precedent. China's going to look at the same thing. If they kidnapped Zelensky, there too, it probably would be very beneficial in the sense of that he's just a puppet of NATO and the EU anyhow. Put in a real elected government. People I speak to in Ukraine, and even the brawl that was in Parliament a couple weeks ago. What was that about? they were, you had people demanding, elections. His polls are down, honestly, from what I hear, at least, they may even be below 20%. And nobody's ever suspended elections. We didn't do it in World War One or two. Neither did Britain. Where's this come from? He is a dictator, and he was appointed. And you can Google it. When he was first elected, all my sources said, look, it was rigged, and he was hand selected to start World War III. And that's exactly what's happened. And I was told that, and I even wrote about it when he was put in power. So this is not a conspiracy theory or something from new. I mean, this is what this guy has done. He's just a hand-picked guy, and he's just loading his pockets. And I would say the real issue here, his right-hand man just got caught stealing 100 million. I informed people in Congress, look, here's the info I have. Zelensky's wiring out $50 million per month to an account in UAE. All right. He has publicly stated that half the money that supposedly went to Ukraine never got there. All right. We know all the corruption from, basically the Iraqi war. You had Halliburton, Cheney's, former company. As soon as they were going to be, investigated, what did they do? They dropped their American, corporate charter and moved to Dubai. I mean, war is the number one way to get super rich, and the money just is never accounted. So the question is this: even the IMF has come out and said that Ukraine is the most corrupt around. The Panama Papers, Ukrainian politicians, the number one on the list. So we know these facts. It's not bullshit. It's not conspiracy theory. You have Ursula, the head of the EU, for 4 years or 6 years now, refusing to turn over emails with Pfizer. All right. They cannot be this stupid. You're sending billions of dollars to Ukraine, and they vanish. Where are they going? Into the pockets of these politicians to vote for this shit? They're never going to be investigated. They know that. So why would you have somebody like Zelensky there with so much controversy over corruption? And nobody says a damn word. Oh, here's another billion. You need another 5? Here you go. No problem. Where's it going?
So with Trump, he's been trying to, cool down this war in Ukraine, but the recent actions in Venezuela, and kicking out the Russians from Venezuela and potentially even Cuba in the future as well, and then calling Putin's war a primitive war. I don't know if you saw that. He said that Putin's military is primitive. They've been going at this thing for 3+ years now. We got it done in less than a couple hours. Are relations between the Trump administration, and Russia deteriorating? And then what does that spell for the war in Ukraine then?
Look, there's definitely a fracture in the Trump administration. When I was called in, I was first said they wanted to give me a briefing on Russia. I said, you want to brief me on Russia, what you're doing? It's usually the other way around, Okay, I went, and then I was asked to write this peace plan, which I did. It took me 4 days to do it, but they asked me to do a peace plan that Putin would accept. Now, I was very surprised, and I'm like, you don't have people in your administration to do this. And then I thought, well, maybe this isn't sanctioned. And I said, is this sanctioned? And I was told yes. It's okay. Then I was asked, can you use your back channels on this? I said, you want me to do that? And they said, yes. Okay. So I wrote the plan. I got it on Putin's desk, and 2 days later, Lavrov came out and said, we're willing to guarantee we're not interested in going into NATO. Now, then you have, I was in this meeting, and main reason I was surprised to be called in is they know my position. And I said, look, NATO is going to do a false flag. They're going to invoke an Article 5 to try and drag us in. We should get the hell out of NATO now. I said what it is. I don't really give a shit, all right? And I was actually told, yes, we know you're right. I was also told, we know you're correct. We will not be at war with Russia. It will be with China. China is expanding, okay? They know it's their time. They're the second largest economy in the world. They're growing, and they know they eventually displace the United States after like 2032 or so. But so the fact that I was called in, what does that mean? It had to mean that we're looking at a fracture within the Trump administration. I said, look, we should exit NATO. Yes, you're correct. Then Rubio stands up. No, we're with NATO. We're not, So he's saying we're not leaving. I'm in a meeting and saying, yes, you're correct. We should leave. So obviously, I'm called in because there is a fracture. I mean, I don't see any other reason to call me in to begin with. Mm-hmm. I'm not part of government. So something, to me, it was something very strange is going on here. And
yeah, there does appear to be some schizophrenia. Like it's one policy one day, and then another day you hear like competing voices from the other side the next day.
Yeah, no, I think that's basically the problem. And so I know Rubio, I mean, I've had contact with him before. I mean, I think that he's a neocon. I was surprised he was being put in as Secretary of State. I was told that was an olive branch to the neocons. Okay, fine. I know that he's been advocating war with Russia, in a sense, before he was even in. When he was in the Senate, he's the one that submitted an act to prevent the president from exiting NATO without congressional approval. Now you just had Massey introducing a bill to exit NATO. All right. So this is getting to be, like you say, schizophrenic here. But I know Rubio has wanted regime change in Venezuela. But this is all not focused on China, but on Russia.
I see. And so would you say that it's a sure shot that Cuba is next in this case? And do you think they'll make it all the way down to Colombia eventually, because he did call out the president of Colombia. He said he better watch his ass. That's a literal quote. And then maybe even Brazil. Is Brazil on the target list as well?
I don't know. I don't think there's. I don't believe there's a target list. Okay. There's definitely, if they make any kind of an overture towards accepting missiles from Russia, yes. Then they're next. But this isn't about drugs or oil. If this was about drugs, you would go into Mexico. Brazil is, look, Brazil is a Marxist utopia. There's complete censorship. If we have clients in Brazil, they just buy a book. To mail something to them, we have to have their personal ID, tax ID, in order to even mail something to Brazil. It's like saying, I need your social security number so I can mail you a book. They're tracking absolutely everything. People don't understand about Brazil. It is a Marxist utopia.
What about Colombia? Will they go after Colombia?
If they, I think only if there's really a major connection with the whole Russia thing. What I would expect more on the drug side would be to go into the drug cartels hiding out in Mexico. I believe that the administration's view of the head of Mexico is that she says no, 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 no U.S. invasion, but their view is that she's just scared and intimidated by the drug cartels.
Gotcha. So what does this mean for oil prices? Because I've heard so many people commentate about, oh, this is going to crash oil because they could potentially tap into 3+ million barrels per day as opposed to 1 million today. But I mean, I've looked at this stuff, and it's to get all of these to get all of this stuff online, it's going to take many years to get to 3 million barrels a day, and that's assuming everything goes swimmingly. And I'm looking at the price of oil right now, it's actually up. All commodities are soaring today. Gold, silver, oil. So what do you anticipate will be the after effects of oil prices, metals prices? Because we also talk about the gold and silver in Venezuela. But if the government's going to retain its sovereignty, then I wouldn't think that we would have access to all that stuff to begin with. But yeah, what's your take on how this will impact markets?
Well, look, as I've said before, if you look at gold going into 1980, all right, a lot of these people say, oh, gold goes up with inflation. That's all just pure bullshit, really. Inflation went up, national debt went up from 1980 to 1999, and gold went down. So obviously there's something more to this. Gold went from 100 to 400 between 76 and 79, December. It went up from 400 to 875 in the last 6 weeks, basically. Why? That's when Russia invaded Afghanistan. It's geopolitical, okay? That's what we have to understand here. So you're seeing gold going up, silver going up, platinum. All these things are taking off right now. It's geopolitics, all right? Our computer's warning this is a panic cycle year in terms of war is concerned. I would be very concerned about, from particularly around the April period, Europe is in dire straits. I believe you're going to see some sort of a false flag to try and claim that, Russia did something. The main reason I think they would even want this peace idea is immediately, oh, we want to send NATO troops in to defend Ukraine. And then they're going to say, oh, Russia shot one of our guys in the foot. That's it, World War III. Europe is falling apart. And economically, I mean, you can look at, as I've said before, just look at the GDP growth off the Fed St. Louis site of Europe versus the United States. It's a tiny fraction. All right. And they're kind of like Brazil. It's a socialistic utopia. And as I've said before, you cannot have social justice, individual liberty, and economic efficiency simultaneously. You go for the social justice, which is not civil rights, it's material. This is Marxist stuff. Okay? That means, oh, you earn $10,000 a month and I only got $5,000. That's not fair. It's absurd. But this undermines the economic growth. Okay? As you know, I was called into China, to help them become capitalist. And it was a fascinating trip. I got to see, basically at a front row seat, I was explaining they were tracking like over 100 teas in China. And I'm answering questions like it's grade school. Well, why is this one tea selling for $1 here but $5 over there, And I said, where's it come from? Well, here. Okay, well, first you have transportation costs. They go, oh, okay. But under communism, if it's $1 here, it had to be $1 there, even if it cost you $10 to get it there. That's why communism failed. And socialism is failing as well. And this is why I say China knows its time is coming. All right, the more Europe is pitiful. The United States is polarizing with these leftist, ideas. And once you get that involved, economic efficiency declines, and you lose your personal liberties. All right. Suddenly, look, Einstein said, what is really the key? It's curiosity. If you're not curious, you're not going to discover something. When everybody is a drone, you're not allowed free thought or free speech. You're not going to discover anything because you're afraid to. All right. The communism of China was completely different than the communism of Russia. Stalin was very paranoid. So in schools, they were teaching the children, if your parents said anything against the state, report them. One did, and they made a big, hoopla out of it. China was different. China didn't care what you said to your wife. But if you talk to the guy next door, that is called the tall poppy syndrome. The poppy that grows taller than the rest of them gets his head cut off. All right. So, in my opinion, in watching and being involved in both sides, that's why China was able to boom and rise to the second largest economy in the world. Because they left humanity intact that way. Oppression, yes, but not to the point that what they care about what you say to your wife. Whereas Stalin was absolutely paranoid. He killed tens of millions of people because he thought they might think about doing something. Killed Kondratiev because he said, capitalism is not going to collapse. Really? That's against what I want to believe. Kill him. So it was completely different, atmosphere between the two. But Europe is, its economic growth is absolutely imploding. And this is why they need war. Throughout history, if a government is near collapse, they need an external enemy. This is the risk going on in Iran. With all these protests, if they get more serious, they'll start a war to divert everybody's attention to that. This is how governments have worked for thousands of years. So the EU, they want war with Russia. It's simple as that. This is what, there's a number of people now coming out realizing what I've said about NATO. I had gotten an email, from another general and said, you're right. NATO is a relic basically from the Cold War, and it should have been shut down. There is no purpose to it. Okay? They're against peace. The only way they keep their salaries and pensions is constantly saying Putin wants to invade Europe. All right? Fine. I mean, Khrushchev, when he said, we will bury you, he was a real believer in Marxism. Putin's not. Putin's, that's why I say Putin's mistake. He keeps coming out and saying, we're not interested, we're not going to attack NATO, you don't mess with a nuclear power, thinking that they would get, all right, fine, we'll back off. No. They say, oh, he's threatening us, he's evil, he's this. It's flipped the other way. Every newspaper over there, all the TV shows, Russia's evil. We got to do something. They're all promoting war, every one of them.
All right, quick break here, because if you're buying gold or silver the normal way, you're probably overpaying by a lot. And that's because most retail dealers quietly tack on these huge markups, sometimes 10%, sometimes 20%, sometimes even 30%. And you don't even notice it. It's like paying $115 for a $100 bill. Doesn't make sense, right? So that's why I've been using the Bullion Standard Pro. It's a membership that basically lets you buy precious metals at real wholesale prices. The same prices that dealers get. So no inflated premiums, no middleman games. Their platform updates every 5 seconds, straight from mints and distributors. So what you see is literally the real market. And here's the crazy part. If you buy something like this gold American Eagle, here's the amount of money you're going to be saving at the time of this recording, at least. So it basically pays for itself multiple folds on many occasions, depending on what you buy. And if you want to try it out, they're hooking up my viewers with an exclusive 10% off their first month. Just use promo code COSM10 at checkout. That's COSM 10 at checkout. So if you're stacking, investing, or just tired of getting hit with hidden markups, check them out now. Bullion Standard Pro. Click on the link down below in the description box and use promo code COSM10. Now let's get back to the video.
Are they going to get it though? What is your model? What does your computer model say about that?
Unfortunately, I would say yes. The computer is projecting the EU is not likely to survive beyond 2030. And they're getting more and more desperate. And look, I mean, I've spoken with people, they are delusional. They think that they can really take Russia and then they'll get the 75 trillion in assets. And that will be twice the size of the United States. And Europe will rise again like the Roman Empire to rule the world. I mean, they're really delusional. I mean, I've been in London and you get a few drinks and the guy goes, the sun still doesn't set on the British Empire. So, okay, fine. I've been in Japan, the same thing. You get, a few drinks in the guy and you're out at night and he goes, the emperor's still God. That's okay. I mean, these ideas, I guess they just don't die easily. I mean, you got Eridan in Turkey, drooling over the idea of the Ottoman Empire rising again. Uh, what people don't realize, what Europe is completely oblivious to, is that, let's say they did go into Russia and Russia collapses. What's going to happen on the other side? China is going to grab at least 4 million square miles of Russia, and that's where all the natural resources are.
Mm-hmm.
China will just, that's it. It's ours now. Then what are you going to do? I mean, nobody looks at this stuff from a long-term perspective. I mean, it's...
No, they can't even see the front of their nose. I mean, let alone like second and third order effects of what they're doing.
Look, China, I can tell you. I mean, we even have an office there. Throughout my career, if I did a conference in Asia, I didn't have to explain that cycles existed because it's part of their religion. All right. Whereas in Europe, in the United States, I had to say, look, there is a cycle and it's regular. Okay. They don't want to believe that because they want to think that, I have free will. I can do whatever I want. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. The cycles apply to collective behavior. Okay. You still have the choice to be part of the mob or to go against the mob. All right. There's always somebody who wants to buy a market and somebody who wants to sell it. Congress, same thing. I mean, look at politics. Get a Democratic president, flips, then you get a Republican. There's always two sides to this stuff. That's what cycles are about. It's never one single type of thing. So all of these commodities, everything that's rising, this is geopolitical.
Yeah.
You should probably expect to see this going at least into the week of the 19th of January. And the computer's showing we've got high volatility coming in the beginning of February. I'm more concerned about geopolitical events expanding around April. Trump going into Venezuela is also fine. It may be stopping Putin from doing a checkmate issue. Great. But at the same time, it's establishing a precedent that Russia and China can say, hey, U.S. does this, we can too.
Yeah, pretty much.
There's two sides to this coin here. And I think that's what the computer is showing, that 2026, even on our war cycles, as well as in the euro, this is a panic cycle year. And to get that on a yearly level is not easy.
Well, what does that mean, a panic cycle and then a panic cycle year? So that implies the entire, yeah.
Like in a market, you get like an outside reversal, takes out the low and then runs up and takes out the high of the previous session, as opposed to just volatility. All right. You might get an 8% move. Fine. But a panic cycle is usually both sides are taken out. All right. So it's much more volatile in a sense. That's why we distinguish that type of a move from just volatility. But the computer, showed that this was going to start the very first week of January, and it's like right on target.
Right on cue. Yeah.
I mean, it's not my opinion. The computer is, when I developed this thing, I was just basically a hedger. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. And we were getting called in because we were really the only people doing major currency moves back from the 70s. And by the mid 80s, I was called into the Central Bank of Lebanon. They asked if I could do a model on the Lebanese pound. So I did. And out came that the country was going to fall apart in 8 days. I called them. I said, look, there's got to be something wrong with this data. And very calmly, they said, well, what currency does it recommend? I said, well, the Swiss franc. 8 days later, civil war began. Had another client. It was one of the biggest shippers in the Gulf. He called me. He says, look, Iraq's going to start attacking shipping in the Gulf tomorrow. What do you think gold's going to do? I said, you tell me a war's going to start tomorrow? He says, yeah. So by the time 98 comes, I stood up in London. I said, look, Russia's going to collapse. I give it a little more than 30 days. That became the long-term capital management crisis. The London Financial Times had snuck in the back of the room and then stuck it on the front page of their second section saying Armstrong says Russia's going to collapse. So over the years, what I've learned, how the computer forecasts war and geopolitical things, is that somebody always knows in advance. Mm-hmm. And they start moving their money. So when that bank, the Central Bank of Lebanon called, obviously they saw capital flows moving. So they weren't calling me for that forecast. They were calling me for the timing. So, when the computer's showing a panic cycle on war in 2026, I stood up at our 2011 conference in Philadelphia, and I said the war cycle turns up in 2014. 2013, you can Google it. I wrote back then, I said the computer's targeting Ukraine. So this is never my opinion. I'm not smarter than everybody else in the world or something like that. The computer's just tracking capital flows to everything.
Yeah. And here's an example, Marty. I noticed this, not to toot my own horn, but I noticed this the last couple of weeks or over the last several months, actually. You've got the oil price here in the red and green candlesticks, and in white, you've got the OIH ETF, which is the oil services ETF. Now, while oil has been crashing down the past year, oil service companies have been getting a bid, and you see the disjoint between the two. And it wasn't until the Venezuela stuff happened that it kind of was made clear. Were these insiders piling in ahead of Venezuela, knowing that companies like Exxon's not included in this ETF, but a lot of these oil service companies may stand to benefit if Venezuela becomes open to business. So is this an example of what you're speaking to? Because you do see a dislocation in where, the oil service companies should be moving in tandem with oil price, no?
Ideally, yes. Look, although I couldn't speak a lot about this, it started in November. So I knew about it coming back around November. When did the split in the prices take place?
Around September.
Yeah, okay. So,
or you could say November or October, something like that.
Somebody, obviously, they knew. Look, you got gold and silver rising. All right. Look, people on the inside knew where things were going. They started buying the metals. All right. Ahead of people even understanding what's going on. We had clients there. I told them, okay, fine. Look, you're going to, we're going into war with Europe. They're going to put capital controls. You better move your metal the hell out of Europe. So then what did you see? You saw a lot of the gold being moved from London and Zurich to the United States as well as Singapore. Okay, that's in advance of knowing what's coming.
And is platinum getting that bid now today? Because I
Yes.
saw a post from you on X saying that people are bidding up platinum because they could potentially see capital controls on gold and silver, but platinum doesn't have that history.
Right. You can look on our site because the computer's tracking everything, and you can look at the the platinum gold ratio, and it basically reached a 23-year low, and put out on our site, I guess last month or a couple months ago, I said, this is it. Platinum's now going to take off. All right, so that's just basically looking at the ratio.
Yeah, there it is. This is platinum to gold.
Yeah.
You hit a 20-year low in June, sometime around June or July of this past, or 2025.
Yeah, so this is what, it's starting to catch a bid. Also, you're looking at what are the sources of platinum? It's Russia and South Africa. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you get into war with Russia, you're cutting off that platinum supply. All right, so just fundamentally, you would expect platinum to rise at that level. Mm-hmm. You'd make at least a minimum of 50% retracement back up on the ratio.
So that would take you around here. That'd be like a 3x in the ratio. Yeah. From a platinum to gold standpoint. And that's assuming gold stays constant.
Right.
So,
but, what you have to understand here is that it's geopolitics that's moving this stuff. All right, you got threats of capital controls, all sorts of different, posturing one way or another. This is basically what we have to contend with, and I think that's when the computer's putting out a panic cycle, not just in war, but even on the euro for 2026. You look at this ratio here, platinum to gold, it's an extreme low. Mm-hmm. This is like gold, 1999, at 250.
Well, here's another low. Here's oil relative to silver, and I think it's at an all-time low as well. So yeah, it's all the way down here. I mean, this ratio, we haven't seen this ratio this low since oil crashed to negative territory.
It's even the silver on the gold ratio. I think you're going to see silver gain. Look, you have a legitimate fundamental shortage of silver. Okay. As of January 1st, you just had China banning silver exports. Okay. The significance of that is that China represents about 60% of the physical silver market. You're already in a shortage of this stuff because you need it for, all this, solar panels and
industrial
data
demand,
centers, etc. So silver can really catch a bid.
Yeah. I mean, we've been seeing it, but the price has been just unlike anything we've seen before. We closed out the year on silver with the highest percent move, or second highest percent move since 1979, I want to say. If we pull up the 12-month candlesticks, we can look at it through that lens. And let's see. Let's do a 12-month candlestick. Yeah, there you go. This is 2025 here. The only other one that's bigger was the one here in 1979, which was
Don
a,
Brothers.
yeah, Hunt Brothers. That was a 366% move in a year. Silver closed out 150 some odd percent last year. So, and if you look at all these other bull markets, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 green candlesticks out of 8. The one in 2002 had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of 9 green candlesticks, and looks like we're just getting started here with this bull market.
Well, you have to understand from a trading perspective. All right, bull markets are always longer in duration than bear markets. Why I think basically is it takes people longer term, a longer period of time to gain confidence in something, but they lose confidence very quickly. So 29, all right, the low was 1932. Comes crashing down by 90%, all right, very rapidly. Same thing in Tokyo, 1989. When you look at these crashes, they're, percentage-wise, they're the greater they are, the shorter amount of time.
I see. One more ratio I want to look at is copper to gold. So if we pull up copper divided by gold, that is at an all-time low too. Yeah, there it is. I mean, wow. It's all the way down in the dirt.
This is reflecting both, the shift to AI and data centers as well as war.
I see. So gold is outperforming copper. That's your geopolitical crisis hedge.
Yeah. But the others are going to catch up.
Yep. And then here's a cool little thing you'll see. It's if you add in the U.S. 10-year yield. Let's turn it on. Actually, hold on. If you add in the U.S. 10-year yield, you'll notice that it was fairly correlated with the copper to gold ratio. And there it is in blue. I'll turn it white so you can see it better. And let's make this log scale. Let's make this log scale. And yeah, so like from 2008 onward, it was fairly correlated. But then in February of 2022, when the Ukraine war started, 10-year yields went up higher. Copper to gold came crashing down. Is this basically a sign that foreign investors were no longer happy investing in U.S. treasuries and were more so rotating into gold as opposed to U.S. 10-year treasuries? Because typically they would move in tandem.
Well, during times of war, the main advantage of precious metals is that you're not betting on who wins.
It's a neutral asset.
And the other thing you don't want to do is in time of war is basically buy government debt, because only a ton more is going to come out. That's when most people don't realize, but there was, in 1951, there was basically a coup at the Federal Reserve against the government, because World War II, the Treasury and the President ordered the Fed to, the opposite of quantitative easing, was that if the bonds went above a certain price, they were to buy them. And to basically cap the interest rates so they didn't rise. Then 1951, what the coup was about was that they came in and said they wanted to do the same for the Korean War. And the Fed said, no, enough is enough, and refused to do it. The Fed is technically independent. They complied for World War II, but they did not comply for the Korean War. So, I mean, that's also what I mean about Europe being in dire straits. You did have the finance ministers of France and UK both come out and hint that they might need IMF bailouts. To even say that means you may have a difficult time in trying to sell debt. That's when the sovereign debt crisis materializes. It's got nothing to do with the empirical level of the debt and all these people talk about, oh my God, 34 trillion or whatever. No, as long as somebody's in line to buy the next tranche, it's okay. The crash comes when that line disappears and you can't sell the next tranche. That's when you end up with a sovereign default. That's when gold rises because it's neutral.
Yeah. I mean, we could also talk about this Japanese bond market as well, because I'm looking at those yields. Those are spiking crazy. I mean, the 10-year yield is all gas, no brakes. It's up another 2% today. But I think we've got to get to some listener questions here. So this is from my Substack. Let's go ahead and move over to that. So yeah, if you guys would like to become a Substack member, you do have the opportunity to ask questions to any of my guests on the show and have your question be read out loud. So this one is from Dushaint Yadav, and he says, request to ask details regarding coming war cycle / peak of pessimism in economy and related time period and cycle when bond crisis shall be on peak. Subsequently, when he sees things going to normal in terms of international relations between major players, i.e. US and China, and to some extent, Russia.
Returning to normal is probably not in the cards. This is all just really getting started. This is, the old Greek trap, basically, of a rival power, China, looking to take out the dominant power, which is the United States.
Thucydides trap.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what we're in. So I don't see any long-term solution to this. You have to have, look, we've got the worst world leaders ever. I mean, I used to be able to have intelligent conversations. You know, Maggie Thatcher was probably the most intelligent head of state I ever met. I can't think of one of them there in Europe that I'd even want to sit down and have a drink with, no less shake hands. I mean, Steinmeier, Macron, Merz, I mean, they're all pathetic. Every one of them, they should be worried about their people, and it's all like, we got a draft, prepare for war. Why? It's because they are losing economic power.
Mm.
Merz has even come out and did criticize the EU over the migrant issues. I mean, just look at all the migrant violence that really took place in Europe for New Year's Eve. Burning churches and stuff. I mean, you didn't bring in people that wanted to assimilate. That's the problem. And most of the people I speak to in Europe are, even got an email from an old friend in UK. He says, country doesn't even look like it ever used to. You had Vance come out and actually said that UK and France are going through a civilization change, and both can end up being Islamic countries sooner than people realize. And as a result, then you would have the first two Islamic countries that are radical armed with nuclear weapons.
But isn't the Islamic percentage in the UK like 6%? Like, it's still a pretty small minority.
Apparently, it's growing, and the government is like locking up people that even criticize them. It's just a mess. Um, this is what Mertz was even talking about. Austria, I hear the same thing. I was in Germany, and there were a lot of migrants around. Then I went back the next year, and I didn't see any. It was in August, and I said, "Gee, where'd they all go?" I was told the government gave them a 2-week fully paid vacation to go back to the countries that they fled from.
Well, it sounds like they want him. I think they want some fresh draftees for the coming war. Then
Yes, that's
that's pretty much it.
I spoke to Romania. They were ordered by the EU to accept another 100,000. And I think the mistake here is thinking you can put a gun in these people's hands, expect them to go defend the very Europe and the policies that you want. They're not there for that reason. So I don't see that any normalization before 2032 at best. The the prospects for war, I think, start turning up sharply from April on. And look, this is we're just caught in a situation where governments will only act out of their own self-interest and not out of the interest of the people.
Well, what about the first part of his question when he asks about the peak in the bond crisis? Do you have any idea when that'll occur, or around the neighborhood?
Well, the peak in the bond crisis, well, I guess he means the sovereign default type issue.
Yeah, I think so, probably.
I would say, when it begins rather than the peak, I think you're looking at a major, default on most of these sovereign debts in Europe. They've defaulted on their debt so many times. Spain, it was a chronic, serial, defaulter 7 times. So I do not recommend owning any government debt. You're not going to get even pennies on the dollar. If you own a major company like IBM or something and they go into bankruptcy, you get something back. Government, it's unsecured. You get nothing back. All right, so that's the main difference. So I would say that sovereign default is going to start to materialize as soon as you see war.
As soon as we see war. All right, so next question from Grisha. So, question for Martin. The message I am getting from most of the macroeconomic people I am listening to these days is that we have to get back to a banking system that supports small enterprise business to prosper and grow into large corporations, not just the banksters. I have spent some time in the Islamic world, and it seems to me that Islamic banking, i.e. no interest to depositors or borrowers, does indeed have the same goal. Martin, is Islamic banking that seems to be working well in Malaysia right now a banking model that the West could work with? So essentially no usury.
I don't really think that's the major issue. What Trump has not looked at, okay, is it's more than just what the banks do. It's also the whole ramification of taxation, etc. All right. Just look at the city of Detroit, where all the auto companies began. They all left. Why? Because of taxation. In 1937, the city of Detroit went bankrupt and defaulted on its debt. Okay. What Trump doesn't understand is that capital has, when you're taxing businesses of that nature, all right, they have the option to leave. And that's what, manufacturing left. When I was helping Japanese companies get into Europe, all right, depended upon what they needed. That's how I got to meet Margaret Thatcher. She was asking, like, she heard this rumor that a guy was sending companies into Britain. And I happened to have known her personal advisor, Sir Alan Walters. And he said, yeah, that's Marty. And it's true? And he said, yes, I met with her. I explained to her, if a company needed skilled labor, like the auto companies, I was putting them in Britain. Why? Because the associated taxation on top of, if I paid an employee the very same amount of money in Britain versus Germany, the cost to the company was 40% higher from all the other regulations. All right. I put, companies into Macedonia. Why? Because I got a 25-year guarantee, no tax increase. I've been explaining this, dealing with another state or province looking to separate. All right. I guess I can say Alberta because I guess that was put on the blog. But I explain, look, if you give an absolute maximum guarantee on taxation, no more than 15%. And it's guaranteed, not, you put this in the Constitution, you're going to bring in all kinds of companies in manufacturing. Why so many companies had their headquarters in Hong Kong? Because the maximum corporate rate was 15%. All right, they got to pay something. If they didn't pay anything, then they're taxed at whatever the rate is in their home country. Taxation is a very significant issue. I testified before the House Ways and Means Committee back, I think it was 96 or so. And they were asking me why no American companies got any of the contracts to make the Yellow River Dam. I explained, look, we tax worldwide income. Germany does not. Germany can bid on that same project. It's tax-free to them because it's outside their country. So they're already 35% less. And any German citizen that they send over is tax-free if you're there for a year and a day. I said, Americans, we tax everything everywhere. Okay, so consequently, no American company got any of the contracts. Taxes are important. Okay, and you can't expect a company to come in, spend $5 billion to build a plant. Your tax rate's 10%. Oh, gee, I need more money because my daughter wants to go to college, so I'm going to raise it to 15%. You can't do this. All right, companies are not going to move. Look, to a country where there's such a currency, risk. As an international hedge fund manager, it's substantially different than a domestic fund manager. The very first question I must ask is country risk. Can I trust the rule of law? Can I trust the government before I put in 10 cents? So I'm not going to advise a client to put anything in Iran. They nationalized all the oil wells. Same thing as Nigeria. If you can't trust them, I don't invest. It's country risk first. This is what Europe doesn't get, and this is the risk now in Europe. I got war, they're raising taxes, they're changing rules, social justice. It's too much of a country risk.
So if you were someone that's wanting to allocate into the markets right now, if you say you had some capital you wanted to allocate, and let's just limit the scope to the metals and commodities market. So gold, silver, platinum, gold miners, silver miners, platinum miners, oil stocks, coal stocks, whatever. Where do you see the best risk reward at this point in time for someone who's wanting to
Well,
allocate?
maybe on some of the ratios, but during World War II, when they put on capital controls in Europe, Europeans couldn't buy gold. So what did they do? They were buying the gold miners. So the stocks did well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is what I mean about country risk. You got to pay attention to the rules and regulations and what they do and what they at least have done before. Once they've created a precedent, they go that way again. Europe is already contemplating. I'll give you an example. I've been on phone calls. They know what my view is on Europe. You never consolidate the debt, and one country gets in trouble, it creates a contagion for the rest. Okay? What are they already talking about? Okay, fine. We understand. You're correct. They're actually considering jettisoning mostly Southern Europe, Italy, Greece, etc., and regrouping to the north. So you're looking at, they're even talking about this behind closed doors at this stage.
Wait, so what does that mean? Jettisoning Southern Europe. What does that
That's
imply?
exactly why I got calls. I said, okay, fine. You jettison them just like that.
Like you just kick them out of the EU,
Yeah.
or what? Okay.
I said, what are they going to use for a currency then? Do they still print euros? Because every central bank has the right to print euros. And they have a little code on each note where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
And the response I get, oh, gee, didn't think about that. Really? People think that these I don't know, just because they're in government, that they're smart and intelligent, and they have no experience in any of this stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pathetic. I mean,
Well, a lot of these guys are just old money. You just come from old money family, like the von der Leyens. I mean, they're an old money banking family in Europe, no?
yeah, but you have also, the old rule of shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves.
Oh, what is that?
If you ever heard about that, it's the first generation creates it, the second generation lives, and then the third generation loses it. So just because these people have been, their families have been in it, doesn't mean that they're anywhere as smart as the original founders, like the Medici or anything like this. But the only way to survive something like that is to institutionalize. You turn it into a public company. So it's no longer a family, because the second generation, then the third generation, it's gone. Just the way it is. It's so you institutionalize it, and that's the only way to beat that cycle.
I see. Well, breaking news now, Marty. This is coming in now. It says ousted Venezuelan leader Maduro pleads not guilty in Southern District of New York court to drug trafficking charges. So, I mean, you have some insight on the Southern District of New York. Why did they choose to put him in that district out of all districts in the country?
Because it's the most corrupt one in the country. They alter transcripts. They do whatever they. Look, I mean, they charged Trump in New York. Okay, that judge's daughter was with with Camilla. I mean, it's
So he's
The
going to be
Southern
found
District
guilty.
of New
It sounds
York
like he's going to be
is,
found guilty.
yeah, look, it's the armpit of the world. It's the most corrupt legal system. Um, I know lawyers. Look, not a single banker has ever been charged. Why? What goes on? Oh, they made $1 billion illegally. Okay, fine. Give us 20%, our cut, and nobody goes to jail. This is New York. Um, so I'm not surprised if he's no way is he ever going to get a fair trial in New York City. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all I got in my
All right.
article for you today. So thank you so much, Marty. If there's anything you want to talk about that we didn't get into, feel free to do so. Otherwise, just let us know where we can find you.
ArmstrongEconomics.com. You can go there. You can get to Socrates from that. I think that's, you don't have to put in any emails. We don't send 50,000 emails a day. And we don't even sell advertising. So we try to keep it as an open forum. And we're not blocked anywhere in the world, from China to Russia even. So everybody knows it's basically the computer, not my personal opinion. Do I want to see any of this stuff? Of course not. But I'm just glad I'm not 18 years old, that's all.
Yeah, well, if you were to go long right now, gold, silver, or platinum, just based off of based off everything we've talked about today, what would you go long in?
I would say that, short gold, long platinum looks pretty good. Even silver will gain against gold at this stage.
I see. All right. Well, there you go, guys. If you enjoyed this podcast, drop us a like and comment "Go Marty Go" in the comment section. And if you want to let me know what you thought, drop me a comment. I do, in fact, read all the comments. So let me know your thoughts. Drop them down below. And by liking and subscribing and doing all the YouTube stuff, you do help in pushing us in the algorithm. So a little bit does go a long way. And subscribe to the channel so you also don't miss another one of these episodes. And then finally, check us out on Substack at capitalcosm. That's substack.com, where you'll get all my stuff early, ad-free, and you'll be able to ask questions to any of my guests down the line. And then if you are looking to add into your stack, more gold, more silver, more platinum, Marty thinks platinum is a good trade right now. You can buy that off the Bullion Standard Pro. We have a special link down below. You get 10% off your first month. It's effectively the Costco